Alright, folks. We got one in chat. Can we hit that thumbs up, please? I appreciate it. Okay, come on now. I don't know why the notifications don't ever go out. I'll wait to get a few more people in here. I'll wait a couple more minutes. I got a little pamphlet here, so it'll give us some of the information we need to know, especially myself. Alright, we're starting on one here. We do have 39 spots to check out. I don't know if I'll make it through the whole thing, but let's go ahead and try it out and see where we get to. And make sure you hit that like button, please. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Of course, y'all know we're right here on the historic Railroad Avenue here. This here is the Southern Pacific Railroad Depot. It's built in December of 1880. Is the last original Redwood depot on the southern route. Newly renovated back in 1998. A dedication was held September 16, 1998. Funding from the renovation was provided by the Sulphur Springs Valley Historical Society. Many community donations and grants were received from the Arizona Department of Transportation and Arizona State Parks. In 1877, a tent camp named Meili was set up for the laborers laying the track, many of them Chinese. On board, the first train to arrive at the end of August 1880 was General Orlando B. Willcox, head of the military for Arizona Territory. The town's name was changed to Willcox in his honor. Willcox town's name was changed to Willcox. Willcox became the distribution center for all southern Arizona. All goods were delivered to Willcox, then transported by freighters to the military forts, surrounding mining towns, and cattle ranches. Coke arrived by train and was hauled to the mine at Globe, and thousands of pounds of copper brought back to be shipped. During the terrible drought in the 1890s, cattle bones were piled high at the depot waiting to be shipped to the mills to be used in the production of sugar. For decades, more cattle from the open range were shipped by train from Willcox than anywhere in the United States. This is spot number one, guys. This is the Southern Pacific Railroad Depot, which is where everybody comes to pay their bills for the city. So it is what it is now. The next spot that we're going to go to is the Nicholson house, which is to the south of me right now. Hey, what's up, Fing? Howdy. Howdy, howdy. Okay, number 2 is the Nicholson house. It's the corner of Railroad Avenue and Grant Street. It's just right up over here. Yo, what up, Four Corners? How you doing, brother? Appreciate you guys. Appreciate it very much. Yeah, this is the Nicholson house. Corner of Railroad Avenue and Grant Street. It was built in 1897 by Dr. Malcolm J. Nicholson, who had arrived in 1894. He was surgeon of the Southern Pacific Railroad, the Dragoon Mining Company, and Old Terrible Mining Company. The veranda was added in 1898. Juan Rubel and family owned the house for many years. He and Joran Rubel had their welding shop across the street where Sierra Lumber is today. This is Sierra Lumber right here. The house is built next to the Macy Hotel. We're not sure what happened to the Macy Hotel building, and we have only a partial photograph. Next, we have the Green Gable Apartments, which you can see why it's called the Green Gables. So all the apartments are green. Green Gables Apartments were originally Valley Hospital. The first hospital in Willcox was built in 1940 by Dr. Robert Hicks as an infirmary. The patients in each cabin would turn on their outside light to signal if they needed a nurse. Dr. Hicks was run out of town in 1949 when he and his nurse picked up a heart attack patient at the 76 Ranch but failed to bring him to the hospital. They stopped at a couple of bars and were found broken down alongside the road to Bowie, with the patient still in the car. Dr. Habmeyer took over and it was used as a hospital until 1952. In 1954, R.E. and Esther McComb were the owners and turned it into apartments. Until a few years ago, the apartments were white with green roofs. Yes. Okay. And this, or it was either this spot was Dr. John C. Wilson's office. Dr. Wilson arrived in Willcox in December of 1903 as a physician and surgeon for the Southern Pacific Railroad. He bought out Dr. Malcolm J. Nicholson in January 1904 and used this building as his office from October 1905 to 1944, when he turned his office over to Dr. Hicks for a while, then to Dr. Habmeyer. Dr. Wilson served as mayor of Willcox 3 times, organized the first American Legion Post and Rotary Club. He headed the committees that built the first airport and the first golf course. Over his 52 years as doctor here, he delivered over 1,100 babies. John and his son, Dr. Jack Wilson, a dentist, shared the building for many years. Next door can still be seen brown brick from the Johnson and Cook Cattle Company building built in 1916. 10 award-winning saddle makers were located in that building in the 1920s. It was torn down in 2020. I believe 5. Okay. Willcox Hotel, I believe it was right here. It's a 2-story building with a balcony. It was the next building built after the railroad depot in 1880, and the dining parlor was usually operated by Chinese men. Many famous people stayed here, including Susan B. Anthony, President McKinley. This is where Edgar Rice Burroughs, famous author of the Tarzan books, stayed overnight when he arrived in Willcox in 1897 to serve as a soldier at Fort Grant. It is also where John Boyette reached behind the counter and picked up 2 pistols, one of which he would use to shoot and kill Warren Earp. In 1900, Sam Spain, new owner in the 1930s, leased it to Lloyd and Paul Duncan. They bought it from him in 1937 and changed the name to Duncan Hotel until Willcox had a hospital. Part of the hotel was used for women coming to town to give birth under a doctor's care and was called the Stork's Nest. It was torn down in 1977. Oh, it's this one right here. Yep. I think. Or it's right here. Okay, well, anyways. Trying to get it together. The mascot and Western Railroad car is on the original site of the Willcox Hotel. Yes, so this is where the hotel was at then. This is the half baggage, half passenger car that was used on the railroad line from Willcox to the Mascot copper mine in the Dos Cabezas Mountains, and it was originally a car from the Central Pacific Railroad Company. A huge celebration was held in Willcox on January 17, 1915, when the first shovel of dirt started construction. The Mascot Mines Company logo was a swastika, which hung from banners all down Railroad Avenue. At that time, it was just an ancient symbol for good luck. Another celebration of 4,000 guests was held at the mine on the day of completion, June 15, 1915. The last spike driven was made of copper from the mine. There were 16 miles of track, 160,000 cubic yards of material were moved, and 340,000 feet of timber installed at a cost of $100,000. The mine and the railroad closed in 1932 after it was found that the owner, promoter T.N. McCauley, used the mine as a big swindle to sell stock shares. Hey, what's up, Tapatíos? Welcome in, welcome in. These are the Chinese workers that were building the railroad. In tent camp along the Southern Pacific Railroad. I can't really see anything, so there's no... Yeah, I thought there would have been a window or something on that door. Okay. Right over here we have the Mason Dory Royal Cafe, Duncan's Coffee Shop, La Casita Cowboy Bar. The Mason Dory restaurant was opened by Charlie Go So Sun in 1897. It changed hands among other Chinese men, including Tom Pak, Sin Lui, and Mr. Singh and Tom Young. Proprietor in 1899, who also secured the contract for feeding the prisoners in the Willcox jail. In 1900, the building was painted a bright red. By 1970, Fong Hong Ming was the owner, and the name had been changed to the Royal Cafe. He was drafted to fight in France in World War I and sold the building to Captain B. W. Tibby of the Mascot Mine. In 1940, Victor Shaver was hired as contractor to build two new buildings north of the Willcox Hotel. These were a coffee shop and a Vaquero bar. The buildings were later operated together as the Cowboy Bar. This bar was used in the movie Red Rock West, filmed in Willcox in 1991, starring Dennis Hopper, Nicolas Cage, Lara Flynn Boyle, and Dwight Yoakam. It used to be a coffee shop, though. You were on number 8. Point Dexter Buildings, corner of Railroad Avenue and Maley Street. Big Tex Barbecue. It was built about 1882, and in 1884, William Poindexter and Dr. O.M. Rogers were the proprietors of Pioneer Meat Market and sold general merchandise, fruits and vegetables with automatic music and music boxes as their specialty. The first meeting of the AOUW was held upstairs on January 27th in 1888. It was called the Nichols Building in the 1890s as it was owned by the Justice of the Peace, W.F. Nichols. The first meeting of Willcox Lodge number 10, Free and Accepted Masons, was held in his office in 1891. Downstairs was Casper Hauser's saloon and the post office from 1903 to 1917. There was also a pool hall and a jewelry store. Okay, and the red dining car. Red dining car was advertised by the city of Phoenix, free to any town of Arizona who would move it. And the Willcox residents working to create a historic district thought it would make a great addition to downtown Willcox. The free car ended up costing about $8,500 to move and arrived in Willcox on April 24, 1986. It is a 1929 Pullman dining car used as the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway, and for many years had been used at the Capitol Mall as a restaurant. Southern Pacific sent a crew to install railroad spur to set the car upon using part of an 1892 track. At different times it has been a Mexican, an American, and a Chinese restaurant before it became Big Tex Barbecue. Yeah, yes it is. I remember a friend of mine used to own it. It was a Mexican restaurant before. All right. We are heading to number 10. This is the Toggery. Yeah, it's still in business, Tapatíos. It's the Big Tex Barbecue. We've added quite a lot on there. first, I mean, it's just the rail car. Then they added all this stuff on here. So yeah, they're still in business. The oldest known business on this site was Louis and Sing Chong's Chinese store, the only one in Cochise County at the time. On the east side of their store was the Palace Hotel run by the Cassius Hooker. It was Miss McCurdy's rooming house in 1911, then Miss Moyer's rooming house occupied by Miss Troutman as a rooming house and restaurant. Next was a D.A. Williams blacksmith and repair shop and J.C. Taylor's meat market. McKay's Market was west of it. These four original old buildings between the Navajo Hotel and the Riggs Bank building burned down in 1921. Thomas Huffman had opened the Toggery clothing store in 1916 across the street as part of a nationwide chain to sell togs, another name for clothes. Huffman bought this property in 1925 and built the brick building. Only one family, the Huffmans, owned the Toggery from 1916 until 2002. The original showcases and many items from the family and the store are on display. The Toggery sold mostly men's and boys' clothing, and next door, now the second room was a style shop with the mostly women's wear. It was managed by Fritz Panchak in the 1950s. Thomas's son, Bruce Huffman, took over the Toggery after World War II. His wife, Hazel, continued to operate the store in her 90s when she sold it to the Sulphur Springs Valley Historical Society for their research library in 2004. So, yeah. This right here, guys, this used to be our newspaper. It's called the Arizona Range News. We don't have it anymore. It's called something else. I don't even bother reading it. Yeah, it's just a bunch of stuff that's in here. That was from 2009, I believe. Yeah, June 3rd, 2009. That was 50 cents. All right, now we got the Piggly Wiggly store. Which is Mac's Bar. It opened in their brand new building on November 17, 1928. This was a nationwide chain of grocery stores. The first manager was George Tinney, then M.V. Lee. Local boy J. Ernest Browning took charge in June 1929 with his partner Mr. King. Sulphur Springs Valley Electric Cooperative, which began in 1938, had their offices here until 1957, and Cochise Medical Center was here in the 1970s and 80s with Dr. Paul Clement and Dr. R.B. Patterson. This building has housed several different secondhand stores, including Chuck Broder's Cherry Cows and several different cows. Okay, this used to be the post office. The post office was located here in a new building from 1927 to 1962. Chester Williamson, Lee B. McCaleb, and Dick Rose each served as a postmaster in this building. In 1913, this was McCurdy's Pastime Pool Hall, purchased by Joe Engel in 1915. We believe this is the building Engel rented, known as the New York Barber Shop, in 1908 when he first came to Willcox. Michael and Patty Burris ran Old Pierce Pottery Gift Shop in the 1990s. Numbers 11 and 12 were remodeled in the early 2000s by Brannick Riggs, and Remax Real Estate Office has located here since 2009. Okay, well, we're going right here to the Riggs Bank, which there is nothing in here. It's on the southeast corner. Originally built by Joseph B. Gersbach in 1912 as a one-story, three-room building. Another story was added in 1913 with 6 rooms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See? C.O. Anderson's law office, T.A. Kanister's shoe store, and Mr. Gersbach's German kitchen restaurant were the first businesses here. The upstairs became the Palace Hotel run by Joseph and Amelia Gersbach until 1915, when it was leased to R.J. German. D.D. Sims purchased the hotel in August 1916 and opened a sweet shop downstairs. In 1917, he opened the Palace Theater, showing silent movies next to the sweet shop. He brought his wife and little daughter Virginia from Pampa, Texas, his daughter becoming the famous singer and movie star gorgeous Jenny Sims during the big band era. In 1918, the theater was moved to Railroad Avenue. Mr. Gersbach took back the hotel and the Farmers Grain Exchange offered downstairs. In 1920, the building was sold to Riggs Cattle Company to be remodeled as a bank. Concrete floors were poured. A light plant provided electric light, and the outside was given a coat of plaster. In 1921, the name was changed to the Riggs Hotel. Miss Ida Mae Lewis had her millinery shop and beauty parlor downstairs. In 1927, the Willcox Bank and Trust merged with the Riggs Bank, and in 1931, the Bank of Bowie also merged, and the name changed to the Bank of Willcox in 1936. It became the Valley National Bank, which was in the location until 1966. The hotel was for a time called the Maverick Hotel in the 1940s. In 1946, Thalen Johnson, tax consultant, had her office here. Rex Kothman sold insurance from his office. And he and his wife had a photography studio here. In 1970s, it housed McCoy's Cowboy Corner Western Wear. As you can see, guys, there ain't nothing in there. Can't really see much. Yeah, you can see it from over here. Alright, now we have the Masonic Lodge, which is just located right across the street here. It was built in 1916 by the Willcox Lodge number 10, free and accepted Masons at a cost of $12,000. The cornerstone was laid on January 26, 1917. The architect was J.F. McClure. The upper story is used for the lodge purposes, consisting of a lodge room, banquet room, kitchen, 3 anterooms, and a storeroom. Today, the Masons still occupy the upper floor. Okay, right across the street This is now a restaurant, locally owned, I believe. It's called Fried, but it used to be the Central Bank of Willcox. It was built in 1915 on property purchased from Frank Rotman. It was built in the Spanish Mission, designed. Yeah. The Spanish Mission, designed by Philip K. Lewis, president of the Central Bank of Phoenix. This branch bank opened its doors on October 16, 1915, with S.B. Brown as manager. It was temporarily transacting business in the Sulphur Spring Valley Bank building on Railroad Avenue until the new building was ready in March 1916. In August 1922, Frank Tillotson moved his clothes cleaning and pressing business into the building along with Mr. Williams' shoe repair shop. 2 years later, the Willcox shoe shop owner was C. Kemp. In June 1924, it was reported that Frank Tillotson has cut openings and put in new doors on the west side of his building so that he can now run an auto from the street in the back part of the building. He also has a large substantial table in the back of the building where he manufactures auto tops and fits them on. All the work is now done inside the building and not outside as heretofore. Believe it or not, they have good food here. I've never tried it, but it's got to be worth it. Oh, this is. Frank Rotman's General Merchandise Valley Store, 111 East Maley Street. This building was built by 1910 as A.I. McAllister's Dry Goods and Grocery. He operated until he sold to Frank Rotman in 1914. 1922, Rotman added a ladies' shop, furniture, and undertaking departments. Rotman joined with E.B. McCaleb to form the Valley Store Grocery Department in 1925. The old front of the building was torn away in 1928. A brick facade was put up with new entrance doors, new show windows, and an awning. I believe this is the Valley Store. It was owned by E.B. McCaleb until 1970. 1977, Cochise County Assessor's Office and Worley Dance Studio in the 1980s. Gwen Bethel and her daughter Jacques ran the Real World clothing store here. For many years, St. Vincent de Paul rented the building for their second-hand store. Yeah, this used to be St. Vincent de Paul here. And this bookstore now, it's called the Valley Store. It was owned by E.B. McCaleb until 1970. Okay, wait. Okay. No, this is the Angle and Bush Lumber Company. 125 East Maley. Joseph Angle and Charles Bush moved their lumber business to this location in 1909. In 1914, as an experiment, tobacco seeds were planted in the lumber yard. The stalks were fine and the leaves enormous. Leaves are sent to a cigar maker and made into cigars and pronounced of fine flavor. As a joke, a half a dozen cigars were made, about 8 inches long and 1 inch in diameter, and presented to various men about town. The business sold to Arizona Lumber Company in October 1915 with George Francis as manager. 1923, P.W. Hamilton owned the businesses, which he sold to R.G. Lewis, who in turn sold it almost immediately in 1924 to Jennings Lumber Company. Harley Winslow bought the lumber company to add to Valley Hardware in 1928. Gus Whitrich operated his sheet metal and tin shop here. Willcox Electric Power Company opened their new store and office in January 1929 to sell electrical appliances. Irene Busenbark Windsor ran a gift shop in the 1940s. Sulphur Springs Valley Historical Society bought the building as part of the museum purchase in 1997. You guys have been here before with me on a live stream. It's called the Cowboy Corral. It's the Chiricahua Regional Museum. In the early days of Willcox, this was the site of the corral and livery owned by Otto Moore. One could also board his stage here to travel to Fort Grant. Otto Moore was killed in a gunfight in Naco, Arizona in 1904 when both men died. Valley Hardware and Lumber Company was owned by Harley Windsor until his death in 1992. He built this building complete with the electric sign and awning in 1928. R.L. Davis oversaw construction, and the building still has the original hardwood floor and pressed tin ceiling. It was built using red brick on the sides and buff brick in front. What's up, Al? How you doing, bro? The show windows still have the original strips of copper with tiling under them, and the west window has the original floor made of oak blocks. Harley then purchased Jennings Lumber Company and merged the two businesses. The building was sold and all the contents auctioned off after Harley's death. Sulphur Springs Valley Historical Society was able to purchase the building and open the Chiricahua Regional Museum at a research center in 1999 of July. Here we go over to the commercial hotel. It was the Moyer Building, 135 East Maley. It was built in 1915 by S.J. Moyer as a business building. Hey, welcome in, Gilbert Bystander. Contractors were Simpkins and Falconer. The bottom floor consisted of 2 rooms, and the first businesses in 1916 were Thomas Huffman's Toggery and Z.I. Williams Saddlery and Harness business. Also in 1916, any person who favored electing Woodrow Wilson for president could meet upstairs with the Woodrow Wilson Club. The Willcox City Council held their first meetings in one of the 8 rooms upstairs, where the first city attorney John C. Gunn had his office. In 1917, A.L. Paschal, agricultural advisor, moved his office in, and Dr. Benjamin E. Briscoe opened his general practice and surgery there in January 1918. In February 1917, the post office moved into the space at that time occupied by J.W. Williams Grocery Store, who sold the stock to Frank Rotman. Mr. H.M. Sykes operated Western Union from 1917. The post office moved into the space at that time occupied by J.W. Williams Grocery Store. Sykes also offered the popular game of boxball. Huffman moved out in 1925, and it became a commercial hotel in July 1925, managed by Miss Minnie Plaster. The movie Dalton, renamed Code of Vengeance, was filmed in Willcox in 1984. And I'm sure I brought that up a couple of times in my chat. Oh, I don't have super chat if you're asking me, but I do have Cash App and PayPal, bro. Um, but if you guys remember me mentioning the movie Code of Vengeance that was made here, I posted it a couple of times on my community page. And this was the exact door where the truck crashed through in the movie. There used to be an ice cream parlor as well. Second Whistle Resale Boutique and Brown's Ice Cream Parlor also used this building. Yes, sir. Some vanilla ice cream on a hot day. Yes, definitely. Yeah, I was Brown's Ice Cream Parlor at one time. Here we have the Western Union office, which is now the Starlit Boutique. This building was built in 1916 by S.J. Moyer, especially for the Western Union Telegraph office. TNT watch and jewelry repair was here for a short time in the 1990s. Dude, thank you guys for all joining in. I appreciate it, man. You guys can sit back and enjoy something. Willcox Saddlery Company was the next building eastward with Z.I. Williams proprietor. He moved in March 1916 and renovated by installing a large show window. In 1964, it was still called Willcox Saddle Shop. Yes, I do have Cash App and I do have PayPal. So if you want to, you can send it that way. That's more than helpful, man. Thank you. This is Scott's Refrigeration, 147 East Maley. The first ones here were McCourt and Getty's until their new store could be ready. In 1897, Clementina Poole, owner of the Headquarters Saloon, built the new headquarter restaurant here. In 1954, W.E. Scott of Bowie was the owner. Thomas Saddle Shop and shoe repair was here in 1972 with Bill and Pat Stark operators. In 1977, Wilburn Thomas was the owner. Okay, now we're heading to the Headquarters Saloon, which is right over here in the corner. So 100 North Railroad Avenue. Here, watch, I'll show you what it looked like before. It's number 24 right there. And that was back in the 1902, I believe, when they had the flood. You can see all this shit was all flooded there. Also uses 149 East Maley Street address. This was the original site of the Maley Brothers Saloon. In 1885, Isaac Hillman sold his Bullhead Saloon to Norman J. Wilson, and in 1892, Cooper and Gooden sold it to Clementina Poole, Wilson's widow. She remodeled the building and added the Headquarter restaurant. The name then named Headquarter Saloon. It passed to Henry Brown when she died. Warren Earp, the youngest of the Earp brothers, was shot and killed here on July 6, 1900 by John Boyette. Years later, it was called the Cattle Exchange. When Prohibition started in Arizona on January 1st, 1915, all the saloons closed at midnight. R.G. Lewis moved his hardware store to this site. He sold to C.E. Busenbark, Harley Windsor in September 1924, and the name changed to Valley Hardware. Hey, welcome all the way from London. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Thank you. Valley Hardware moved in 1928. Okay. And this building sold the same year to George Kennan Bay to open a cafe. When Chick Williamson, a later owner, died, A.O. and Carmen Ricks bought it and named it Ricks's Tavern. See, Ricks's Tavern is just up the street here, and you take a left at the stoplight. That's at the corner of Grant and Haskell there. The original building burned down in 1946 or 1947, and Ricks's Tavern reopened on Haskell Avenue. Bank branch program. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, and if you guys are more than welcome to drop each other's links or whatever. If you aren't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe bell so you can get all the notifications. This here, number 25, Arizona House, Drugstore, Barbershop. It's 104 North Railroad Avenue. This building was the original Mesker pressed metal facade was built in 1892 by George H. Stratton for his clothing store. It replaced the Arizona House, the very first hotel in town that was owned by Mary Powers, mother of the first Anglo baby born in Willcox. The boy was newly born when General Willcox arrived on the first train in August 1880. General Willcox told the mother he would give the baby his own silver cup with his initials engraved on it if she named the baby Willcox Powers. So she named her son James Willcox Powers. Joseph A. Bright, our first photographer, opened his drugstore and photography studio on this site in 1889. Moved to San Francisco in 1895 and leased the building to E.A. Nichols. Dr. Malcolm J. Nichols worked out of Nichols Drugstore when he first arrived. When he and Dr. Aiden couldn't get along, M.J. Nicholson opened his own drugstore 2 doors down. J.P. Cummings had his Willcox barbershop here, and in 1953, E.E. Perkins owned the barbershop. And by 1977, it was Orlando Lucero's barbershop. Now, this is where I used to come with my dad to get a haircut when I was a kid, man. And Orlando, man, he was a good guy, man. Really good guy. After you get your haircut, he'd give you one of them dum-dum lollipops or whatever. You know, it'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I remember it all, man. They just, right up against this side as you go in the door, it used to be the 2 shop chairs. And up over here was the mirror and stuff. All of his things. Man. Okay. And right here, number 26, this was the Rico Cafe. The middle door was the Rico, a restaurant owned by Sam Ching. By 1954, Willcox Auto Parts with Delmer A. Smith, owner, had moved in. Over next door, we have the Nicholson Drugstore, 112 North Railroad Avenue. This was the original site of the Eureka House, a hotel owned by Mr. and Mrs. W.S. Davis. A token was found good for 1 drink at the Eureka House. It's the only one known to exist and was listed for sale for $3,500. Malcolm J. and John Nicholson opened their drugstore here in 1897. It was purchased by A. A. Nicholson in 1900. A. A. was mayor of Willcox in 1920. His son Marshall Nicholson inherited the store. Dr. J.C. Wilson had his first office in Nicholson's drugstore in 1904. 1898, a Bartlett watchmaker from Switzerland had watches, clocks, and jewelry for sale. In 1924, Louis Zeitz jeweler and diamond setter was located here. In January 1927, the old porch was torn away and new awning was put up. The last use was Teeter's Museum. See, most of this stuff, it's pretty original. It says Mesker Brothers, front builders from St. Louis, Missouri. I think this was when they did the renovation to it. Right here, ironically, it's called the Palace again. This was the site of a meat market since the 1880s. Justice of the Peace Jasper Page ran Page's Meat Market here. Page tore down the original building in 1909 and reopened in the new building January 1910. The meat market was in one side and L.V. McCourt had his real estate office in the other side in 1910. Lyman Hayes had his attorney's office there in 1915. Hayes gave the building a complete renovation by raising the roof on the rear of the building and adding 2 new rooms. The Palace Club is mentioned in 1918, and in 1922, Li Hong had a restaurant here. In 1924, Miss William Flanders moved her Palace Cafe into the Page building. By 1925, it was a Willcox Cafe. 1933 photo after Prohibition says Palace Club. And it's now called the Palace. In 1936, it was owned by W.E. Johnson. In 1934, the Palace Club Cafe opened for business in the rear of the Palace Club, where the Johnson Pool Hall had been. Harold Schultz, owner in 1977, still called it Palace Club. Dave and Lawanda and Nutula, owners in the 1980s, may have been the first to call it the Historic Palace Saloon. Steve and Jody Clifton bought it from Nutula's and then sold it to the Willcox Historic Theater. Yep, so now this is a place where like kids and adults alike, they can come here and do like activities like photography, art, things like that, things that involve theater, which is really nice. They don't have too many places around here for kids to do things. And right here, ironically, this building was originally owned, well, if there was a building right now, but there wasn't. Well, there was, This building was originally owned by W.A. Fege as a meat market and Harry Park's fruit and vegetable store. Also occupied the building in the early days. In 1894, it may have been Willcox Lunch Counter and Bakery with Ah Wing proprietor. 2 doors north of the drugstore. The building was condemned by the city council in 1925 and torn down. G.W. Holt purchased the empty lot in August 1925, and a new building was built in 1933 as a hamburger joint. After 1940, Mrs. Joseph W. Cornett called it Cornett's White Spot Hamburgers. The board covering each window would be brought down to create tables for high school kids to sit and eat. It was the most popular place in town. All the older generation in town who remember the White Spot say the burgers there were the best they've ever eaten. She ran until her death in 1965. She trained Virginia, who named her Virginia's Chili Parlor. A photo taken in 1989 has the sign in the window, Palace Chili and Burger Emporium. In 1996, the building was called Little Palace Restaurant. Rodney Brown reopened his restaurant there in the late 1990s. The Willcox Historic Theater Inc. purchased the building about 2020. The structure had major structural problems and could not be insured, so it was torn down and a nice courtyard created the space. Alrighty. This is called the Midway Saloon. Originally, this was Dave Drew's Meat Market, and then City Meat Market. Hold on. Hey, what's up, VRN? Appreciate you coming in. Welcome in, Bank Branch Program. Sorry. They ran a meat wagon to Cochise and Johnson 3 times a week and twice a week to Dos Cabezas with an ice box and ensured delivery in its first-class condition. Constantly on hand were boiled hams and other prepared meats, and fresh vegetables were available every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. The beef was furnished from Mr. Feig's Summit Ranch near Russellville. Mort Bennett had a lunch counter there in 1907 where his roommate and dishwasher Elsie Brockman drew a gun on Bennett one evening. He was ruled insane and taken by the Constable Snow to Tombstone. The name changed to Midway Saloon, and on June 12, 1912, Mort Bennett, the bartender, shot Roy Wiley, a former friend who had killed Mort's dog. Roy stumbled out of the saloon and died on the sidewalk. Mort was sentenced to 17 years in prison. In 1914, Caspar Hauser put in an oven and opened the Tidbit Spot, cash bakery and delicatessen with fine sausages and tempting baked goods. On August 18, 1922, the Arizona Range News reported the Adobe building belonging to W.A. Feig on Main Street, occupied by O'Connor the tailor, crumpled and fell Monday morning. In 1922, the building was remodeled with a new adobe wall with concrete foundation, and the front was replaced with brick and fine show windows. In 1933, the office of Sam Armstrong was moved to his building along with Miss Bertha Vermond. Home demonstration agent in 1954 was a Top Hat restaurant in the 1980s. It was owned by Tom and Diane Mullally, known as North Rail Imports and Antiques, with south of the border gift items. Then it was Willcox Pet Center and later Kathy's Party Supplies. It was Roddy's Annex when the Willcox Historic Theater Inc. purchased the building and named it Studio 128 to provide a place for arts, craft, and events. Right here we have the historic Willcox Theater. The original building was the Elite Saloon and Billiards owned by John F. Crowley, who came in 1883 as deputy sheriff. This old building was torn down and the current building was built in 1937. 1933, Cactus Mac, a hometown boy, and his band came to town and formed in the theater. One of the singers in his band was Leonard Sly, who became known as Roy Rogers. D.D. Sims purchased the building in 1917 and moved his Palace Theater here from the Gersbach building. After World War I, he named it the Liberty Theater. Mr. Long named it the Mystic Theater. Later it was called the Willcox Theater. It was remodeled in 1989 in 2 theaters by Dorman Brown and known as Rex Allen Theater when the Rex Allen Museum owned it. When it closed for lack of funds, a nonprofit group, Willcox Historic Theater Inc. purchased the building from the museum. Okay, we have the Windmill Park. Orville Mickens donated the windmill to replace the old windmill seen in historical photographs. The park and stage area were created by the Rex Allen Museum in the 1990s, and local justice of the peace Al Bowman won the contest with his idea to use the name Windmill Park. The sale of squares and sidewalk for people to write their names helped raise money for the museum and theater. The line of squares with copper stars embedded are signatures of movie stars who were in Willcox for Worn Earp days. Oh, here we go. Here we go. The building to the south was originally called the King Building. Oh, two buildings were burned down in the 1970s. The building to the south was originally called the King Building after George King, the postmaster. The earliest known site of the post office. McCourt and Geddes purchased George King's businesses and moved their store into the King Building in July 1897. Samuel Geddes became postmaster. In 1918, Dee Dee Sims owned a sweet shop there and lived upstairs with his wife and daughter Virginia, gorgeous Jenny Sims. Oh, there we have it. According to Getty's General Merchandise, in 1898, they brought the adjoining lot to the King Building from Harriet E. Lath and the property occupied by E.B. Moore, stockbroker. An F.E. Storm Butcher. It was built in 1898 by F.E. Cadwell. Hunt performed the mason work. The iron front arrived in June 1898. They called the building the Dewey Block in honor of Admiral Dewey of the Spanish-American War in 1898. The post office moved here in 1898 with Samuel Geddes as postmaster to 1904. In 1901, McCourt was the agent here for William Whalen's Willcox and Aravipa stage line. McCourt and Geddes filed for bankruptcy in October 1903. John Gleason, namesake of the town of Gleason, was a successful bidder for the stock and fixtures. Oh shit, I think it was right here. Oh. The original fixtures. Hey, what's up, Jason Ghost Hunter? Welcome to the stream, man. If you missed anything, you can always go back and check it out, man. Thank you for tuning in. Joseph Shortner purchased the building for a storeroom. The post office moved there again in 1922 to 1927. It was the Western Bar when it burned down in the 70s. And, okay. It's called the Schley Saloon. Now the Arizona Cowboy Museum in honor of the local cowboy who became a famous singer, cowboy movie star, and Disney narrator. Originally, it was the site of Frederick Carroll and George Rom's fashion saloon. Joseph Shortner pushed it in 1897. He tore the old building down and built a new one in 1899. That he named the Schley Saloon after Commodore Schley of the Spanish-American War of 1898. Built in 1927 to Harry Parks, and in the 1950s, it was Tom Flaherty's furniture store. Sacred Heart Thrift Store was here in the 1980s until the building was renovated for the Rex Allen Museum. I can't really see anything in there. This is the Willcox Bank and Trust. Neoclassical style building is faced with white glazed Italian brick It features the original pressed metal ceiling with two large skylights. The doors are copper covered, as is the trim around the windows. Built in 1917 by H.M. Hall, the new bank building opened for business March 17, 1917. To the right of the entrance was a consultation room and private offices of cashier H.E. Dunlap and assistant cashier H.A. Loudermilk. The tower's windows are presided over by W.C. Bridwell, the collections and exchange by T.D. Ward. There's also another window for statements. At the back of the working space was a steel and concrete safety deposit vault, and just to the left of the entrance of this was a booth for the private use of the safety deposit customers. Okay, I believe this is Soto Brothers, the Soto Brothers store, I guess. I'm not sure. I think it's the next one. Pablo and Mariano Soto's family originated in La Rioja province of Spain. Their family had come to California with De Anza in the 1770s and became wealthy fruit farmers. The brothers were doing business in Willcox as early as 1883, and in 1888 were taken in as partners in John C. Falls Mercantile. Upon Mr. Falls' death in 1895, the Soto brothers purchased the business from his heirs for $42,000. The store was at one time 75 foot deep and 150 feet long in dimensions. In 1900, they cleared $150,000 in sales in their Willcox store and $100,000 in their store at Pierce. The original store was built of adobe, and there was a livery stable to the north and a corral in back named the OK Corral. The store closed in 1909, and the Norton Morgan Commercial Company expanded over into that place. Okay. (1954). This was Yule's Trading Post. Loisius J. and Winona Yule, owners, managers. Okay, wait. All right, we'll just get that. Norton Morgan Commercial Store. (180) North Railroad Avenue. This is said to be the first building built in Willcox. This adobe was the oldest store in Arizona, still operating in its original building to this day. When the Willcox Commercial closed its doors, the center section was built by John Norton and his partner Madison Stewart in December 1880. The north section, 40 feet by 100 feet, was added before 1900. A 20-foot by 80-foot warehouse adjoining the main building was built in May 1905. Then the south section, 24 feet by 80 feet, was built in 1915. During the Geronimo campaign, General Miles and his aides based their operations out of this store. Henry Morgan, the first mayor of Willcox, became Norton's partner, and the name was changed to Norton Morgan Commercial in June 1903. The new company was a consolidation of the Willcox, Pierce, and Cochise branch stores of Norton and Morgan with a capital of $100,000. And the Willcox store was a distributing point and the headquarters for the three stores. The very first bank in Willcox, the Willcox Bank and Trust, opened in the spring of 1907 and was first housed in the furniture department of the commercial. G.W. Holt purchased the store in 1924 and changed the name to the Willcox Commercial Company. Ownership then passed to his daughter and her husband Ethan Lynn Camp in 1937. Richard Seidel purchased the building in 1974, and the Seidel family ran it for 38 years. The building was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1903, or 1983, sorry. All right. Now we are heading to the last of the tour here. We're going to the Schwartner house. Which is right here on Stewart. 124 East Stewart Street. This house was built in 1881 by Dalo Smith of redwood in the stick style of architecture and was used as an overnight facility for Army personnel en route through Willcox to Fort Grant. Dalo Smith also sold the house to Charles and Addie Pugh in 1890. Joseph Schwartner purchased the home from Mr. Pugh, owner and editor of the newspaper, in 1898 and moved in with his wife Louise and daughter Mary, called Minnie. His son Albert was born in the house in 1900. Rooms were added on the west side and used as a boarding house. Minnie became the first woman elected to serve as the Willcox City Council on the Willcox City Council. Her husband Art Nordis was killed in a railroad accident. Albert became a surveyor and lived in the house until it was given to the Sulphur Springs Valley Historical Society in 1983. New additions to the Willcox town site in 1960 were named the Schwartner House. Were named the Schwartner Edition and the Nordis Edition in their honor. The house was entered into the National Historic Register in 1983. A 5-year restoration with volunteer labor was completed in 1989, with only the 3 original rooms being restored, along with the original outdoor kitchen. The little outdoor building with kitchen and bathroom was renovated by Willcox Cowbells with artistic style work above the sink during the time they held their meetings in the house. I don't know about that. I've always wondered about that. Like everybody would say that it's an upside down cross or something, but I don't know. It's just everybody's different, I guess. Well, yeah, this is the Schwartner house. You can see all the little some of the old dishes that they have in there and ceramics. Okay, now this is the last of the tour here, guys. It's a Pablo Soto house, built of adobe by Dalo Smith. It was sold by Edward Barron and his wife to Pablo and Amelia Soto in April 1884. It was enlarged in 1897 with a new ornamental roof. C.O. and Lula Anderson lived here during the years around statehood. She was a charter member of the Women's Club and had the first library in Willcox in her home for the ladies to use. The celebration on Statehood Day was held here. Lula won awards every year in the flower show for her dahlias. It was later used as Thalen Ridge's accounting firm and Dr. Habmeyer's office. And Gladys Tucker lived in the home for many years. There is a story that Chinese or Vietnamese farm workers lived in the house for a while and the plumbing got completely blocked up by rice. Alright guys, well that's going to do it for this one here. That's the last of it. I was 39. Started over here. Went around up Maley, back down Maley again, down Railroad Avenue, and now this is the 39th spot right here on Stewart Street, guys. I do thank you guys very much for tuning in. I'm just gonna keep it live until I can get to my bike, just parked nearby. Let's see how much fucking power I got. I'm at 60%. I'm good. Well, we do got several new businesses here. Hello, who's still watching? I give me one of those gimbals like whoever bystander has, man. Shit, that stabilizes everything, so that way you don't have all the shakiness. Just using one of those phone holders that you use for your car. Alright guys, that's going to conclude this tour. Thank you for spending an hour and a half with me. I really do appreciate you guys very much for tuning in and supporting the channel. And coming and seeing what it was like back then and what all these old buildings were. But that's going to do it for me. I got my bike still here, so good thing. Got my buddy's shop here. And this is the new location of Orlando's, so if you guys are ever in Willcox and you guys need a haircut, just remember it's right here at the corner of Haskell and Maley Street. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for me. This is the official Lone Wolf of Arizona, Jose G. Stay strong, be different guys. I'm out.